Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Caring for the Caregiver. Today's topic is stress management, and joining us today is Kim Raymond. She is one of our clinicians here at Community Hospice. And Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, really, oftentimes when people hear the word stress, it has a negative connotation. Rarely ever does anyone associate it with any sort of positive benefits. And so that's why we're going to start with really looking at what is it truly. So in general, we would say that stress is just your mind and body's response or reaction to a real or imagined threat, event, or change. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more in just a couple of minutes here. And so whatever these threats, events, or changes are, this is what we call stressors. So as I was mentioning, we tend to think of stress as being a bad thing. But again, there's purpose behind all human behavior, and our bodies were basically developed to experience stress for a reason. And so that's why we actually need to look at what we call good stress versus bad stress. And so good stress is part of human instinct that exists to help us survive. It's meant to give us short-term motivation to help you focus, have energy, and just kind of overall enhance your performance. So some examples of when good stress would kick in would be if you're about to take a test, you're going to a job interview, you're responding to an emergency. Those are kind of some examples of times when having that real brief, kind of burst of stress response in our body can actually help us and support us. Bad stress is what we all tend to usually think of. So in today's world, though, people are faced with stressors much more frequently than our bodies were ever really built for. So bad stress or chronic stress is stress that's really ongoing and lasting, days to years. There's some people who say, I can't even remember a time when I didn't feel stressed. Okay. So then also just some additional factors to take into consideration with having the pandemic the past couple of years. That has definitely had a tremendous impact on our day-to-day lives. So things such as concern about, being exposed, that risk factor, it's something that a lot of us are kind of stopping and having to hesitate and think about before we decide to, go to some sort of group or community event or travel. Those are things that we didn't have to factor in before. Taking care of personal and family needs while working. I know kids for the most part are back to school now, but that still can be a little bit of a juggle. Learning new communication tools and dealing with technical difficulties, and just simply adapting to a different workspace and or work schedule with so many more people now working from home. Okay. So again, we are, as humans, we are the only species that has the ability to experience stress simply by our thoughts, really looking at actually our thoughts, our beliefs, and our attitudes. So, simply thinking about maybe an argument that happened a couple days ago, replaying that in your head, or even thinking about maybe a difficult conversation you're going to have with someone and not knowing how that conversation might go. Your self-talk, feeling like you don't have the ability to handle a certain stressor, or if you're trying to juggle a variety of things, simply thinking about those things can really trigger your stress level. And then our external stressors are the things that happen in our day-to-day life. So, maybe becoming ill, having a conflict or an argument with someone, sitting in traffic, having a test, changes in health. Those are sorts of things that we consider are external stressors. And the other thing I want to touch on real quick too is when we're looking at internal stressors, oftentimes our thoughts, what we are saying to ourselves in our head about our ability to handle the stress, oftentimes is actually more impactful than the actual stressor itself. Now, obviously that's a generality. We have certain stressors that are more, significant life-changing events. But it just goes to show simply our thoughts and our beliefs on our ability to handle stress. That alone can really impact the severity of our stress levels. Okay, so just some interesting statistics from the CDC. So it says that stress is the basic cause of 60% of all human illnesses and disease. That is a very large number. Stress increases the risk of heart disease by 40%. It increases the risk of stroke by 50%. It increases the tendency to overeat by 40%. And it causes a decrease in sleep by 44%. So, we definitely see how it not only impacts us in terms of our mental health, but also how that spills over and affects our physical health as well. So now looking at symptoms. So in talking about the emotional symptoms, I want you to imagine a gas stove, and you're going to boil a pot of water. Now, if you fill that pot with cold water and then put it on the stove, even if you turn the gas switch up high, it's going to take a while for that water to reach its boiling point. But if you fill that pot with hot water, or even just warm water, we tend to find that we're able to get our water to reach that boiling point at a quicker speed. And so it's kind of a good symbol for what happens for us when we're calm and in good space and feeling relaxed, and we're faced with a stressor. How intense we feel that stress, and also how long we feel that stress. Normally it's not as severe, not as intense. But if we're already feeling stressed, even just mild stress, and then let's say something else gets put on your plate, kind of just like that pot of water, you're going to hit your boiling point much, much quicker. So, that's where we see someone's much more likely to just kind of be more irritable, maybe kind of lash out, because instead of their stress level maybe being at like a 5 on a scale of 0 to 10, if you're already at a 3, you're going to get knocked up to maybe a 7 or 8. So again, lots of different symptoms we can experience with stress, but just some general items that we tend to see, more irritable, anxiety, depression, just kind of feeling more moody overall. When we look at the cognitive effects, definitely we tend to be more forgetful, having racing thoughts, poor concentration. A lot of times people will say they have a hard time sleeping at night because they've just got that busy brain going and you feel like you can't turn it off. Some behavioral symptoms, things that we do, how we act in response to stress. Again, maybe we're more argumentative or more likely just to kind of lash out or react at someone. Sometimes because we just feel so overwhelmed, we end up avoiding responsibilities, nail biting. Sometimes we turn to substances. Again, big variety of ways that we respond to that. And then some physical symptoms, insomnia, so changes in our sleep. So, and again, in general, when we have difficulties falling asleep at night, that tends to be more associated with anxiety. Whereas when we're waking up in the middle of the night and struggling to go back to sleep, that tends to be more of a depressive symptom. But we can see both of those types of sleep struggles happen with stress. Hair loss, low sexual drive, just kind of tummy pain, kind of have that churning feeling in your stomach. Fast heartbeat, high blood pressure, headaches, fatigue, and just some muscle tension in our bodies. Okay. So just real briefly, I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but episodic stress is when we're having kind of frequent, intense bouts of stress. So it's not constant, but we're constantly getting thrown into these different states of stress. So, maybe if you have a demanding job and you frequently have projects that tend to add on more work hours or just more pressure that's associated with them. If you have a family member who has some frequent health issues, that can cause some frequent episodes of stress. Whereas with chronic stress, you don't see kind of the roller coaster or the waves. That's when you just have this constant, persistent feeling of stress. You don't ever feel like you get a break or a relief. And again, I mean, both types of these stressors can definitely have a big damaging effect on both our mental health and our physical health. Okay. So what do we do about all this? So kind of looking at our thinking style, our behavior, and our lifestyle are the three ways we're kind of going to dive into this for managing stress. So the first thing I want to hit on is there's been a lot of research over the past few years on having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. If you have kids at home, this is something that's definitely being incorporated into a lot of the schools of trying to teach kids the difference between the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And so what it is when someone has a fixed mindset, it's having the belief that you're basically born with all of the skills, talents, intelligence you're going to have. And that's just kind of how it is. And you don't have the ability to change that. And so it ends up leading you to kind of naturally feel more hopeless and out of control. And like you're just not going to be able to change something. Whereas with the growth mindset, it's understanding that our brains have the ability to change no matter how old we are. Even into our later years of life, we're learning about what's being called neuroplasticity, and that the brain has the ability to change. And so this is what it's really hitting on, that regardless of our age, you can continue to grow and improve upon your talents, your intelligence, your abilities, your skills. And it's also having a focus on the effort and not the end result of something. It's seeing failures as learning opportunities that can be practiced to improve upon. So, when we take that outlook to life, It causes us to feel more optimistic, to feel more hopeful. And when we have that type of attitude, it makes us more resilient when handling stress. You're more likely to rebound, per se, from a stressful situation much more quickly and easier. If you're feeling like, hey, this is a difficult time, but I have the ability to, improve upon this and make it better, or that sort of effect. The other thing that I want to touch on with our thoughts is our brains were basically wired to focus on the negative. And that's related to ensuring our survival, because, years and years ago, it was really important that you remembered that in this one area that you walked by, there was a tiger and you needed to remember that so it didn't chase you and get you. It didn't matter if you remembered that you saw a patch of pretty flowers. And so that's something that has stayed with us. So that's why it's so easy for us to think about and remember and focus on the negative. It's this old survival skill that we carry with us. So I always say, remembering the negative is kind of like Velcro to our brain. Whereas being able to think about the positive is kind of like Teflon. It just slips right off. So, we have to be more intentional in thinking about the positive things. And so one way of helping you to do that is thinking about, maybe 3 things that you're grateful for at the end of each day. It can be simple things, really enjoying the warm shower you had that morning, a smile from a stranger when you were walking by them in the grocery store, whatever it might be. And, not just quickly listing them off through your head, but the goal is when you think about those things to try to really focus on that item that you're grateful for about 20 seconds. Basically, what we found from research is by focusing our energy on things we're grateful for at least 20 seconds, it has the ability to kind of hit home more, to really have a benefit to us in terms of how that impacts us. So again, shoot for 20 seconds. Okay, so now looking at behavioral changes for managing stress. Try developing a morning routine so that you can start your day with a calm and peaceful start. Oftentimes, that first hour or so of our day, if it starts out chaotic with stress and conflict, it really impacts our mood and outlook on how the rest of the day is going to go. So, whatever that might be, if it's, getting up 15 minutes sooner to have a cup of tea, just in a quiet room, or to look at a book, do some yoga, sit outside, whatever it might be. But just, think about how can you get your day off to a good start. Scheduling time for relaxation and self-care. So again, even if we have a busy life, it doesn't have to be a significant amount of time. But carving out even just 5 or 10 minutes each day. And one way to help you to remember to do it is making it like an appointment. So maybe it's something that you write into your schedule or you put in your phone as a reminder to help make sure that you take that time for yourself, even if it's a 5-minute, walk around the block or a meditation, whatever that might be. So the other thing that's really important to think about is your boundaries. We can really add to our stress level when we're taking on more than we can handle or more that we want. Sometimes that feeling of guilt causes us to say yes to things that really ends up harming us. So, being okay with saying no if there's something that you just don't really want to do. or that, you just don't have the ability to take on. It's okay to say no. So then the last thing is, finding ways to get social and doing it in a manner that fits you. So an interesting fact that I once heard at a training that I thought was really eye-opening is that when us as humans experience social rejection, or when we feel socially isolated, the part of our brain that lights up is the same part of our brain that lights up when we experience physical pain. And, I think that just really speaks to how much we were wired for social connection. So again, I really emphasize finding ways to get social in a manner that fits you, because it doesn't mean you're going to some large group event. It could be a phone call to a good friend, or, a Zoom chat, whatever it might be, but just making sure you're finding ways to feel connected with others. So lifestyle. So, some of these things I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with, but just things to keep in mind. Looking at your diet, if you smoke or alcohol intake, what is that looking like? Exercise. Again, it doesn't have to, be anything real extraneous. But we know that when we get our bodies moving, it helps to release that feel-good neurotransmitter that really helps to improve our mood. Looking at sleep, again, if getting 8 hours just isn't realistic, and right now you're getting maybe 6 hours of sleep at night, make some little mini goals. Say, okay, I'm going to start trying to get, maybe 7 hours of sleep last night, because, when we're tired, it definitely has an impact on our mood and kind of our outlook on things from day to day. Leisure, again, play isn't just for kids. We should never stop playing. We need that still as adults. So finding ways to do things that you have fun. That's why we have things such as adult coloring books that have become so popular. These are, different things that we shouldn't stop doing just because we've reached a certain age. Finding time to relax in whatever way that might be for you, and just being mindful of how social media impacts you. It's really easy to scroll through Facebook or, Instagram, things like that. And really just kind of tuning in and paying attention to, how do you feel when you do things like that? So this next one, lessen the stress of others. So I feel like this really taps into the idea, if anyone's familiar, there's this wonderful children's book called How to Fill a Bucket. And it basically teaches kids that when we do acts of kindness and when we help someone else, not only does that help to make that person feel happy, but we often also feel good as well. So it's filling two buckets at once, sort of the idea. So, looking at different ways where you can kind of do, volunteering or just some acts of kindness for others. Again, that's not going to be too much for you, as those things can also help to boost our mood and help with stress levels. So again, just a list of some different ideas if you're interested in some local volunteer opportunities. Of course, we have a variety of volunteer opportunities here at Community Hospice, and we always love having our volunteers. They're an integral part of the work we do here. But again, volunteering at various hospitals, the Haven Women's Center, food banks, huge variety. And then again, helpful apps. We've seen a lot of apps become developed, or especially around mindfulness. So, if you're having a hard time sleeping at night, you've got the busy brain going on. Sometimes utilizing a sleep app where you're listening to a sleep story or a meditation, or even just simply some nature sounds. They can kind of act as like an anchor for your brain to kind of get you out of your thoughts, which can help you with sleep. Or if you, even during the middle of the day, you're feeling stressed, kind of taking a moment to step away from your thoughts and just kind of have a mindful moment to yourself. So checking some of those out. Again, just some more resources. And I think that's it. Do we have any questions?
Have you tried any of the self-care apps?
I have. I actually, I like the Calm app. That's one I use myself. I like again, I think for the most part, most of the apps have similar features of having guided meditations plus some sort of sleep stories, and then also just kind of some nature sounds. So I find them to be really helpful with falling asleep at night.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much, Kim.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. If you need any additional resources, you can contact us here at 209-578-6300, or you can visit our website at hospiceheart.org. I'd like to invite you to our next presentation on October 13th at 11 a.m. on finding alternative help community resources. This video will be available on our Community Hospice YouTube channel. Thank you all for joining. Bye.